Macabrecast, big Halloween show. Join us around Horrorwood and into territory on terror. There's just one way to handle the worcifers and the spoilers, and that's with me, Doc Mark, and Karis, the little mummy, and the smell of Macabrecast. I'm Doc Mark, and this is Macabrecast. Welcome to the big Halloween show. I'd like to start this off with a personal memory of my own. It's the first week of October in 1974. I'm 5 years old, and I'll be 6 in 3 months. I say that because that's important to a 5-year-old who's going to be turning 6 soon. My parents are taking me to Woolworths because the whole line of this year's costumes are out. Everything from Bugs Bunny to Wonder Woman. But my eyes can't move away from the Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Mummy costumes. This particular year, it would be Frankenstein. Now, if you grew up during this time, you can probably smell the vinyl on these costumes. Just as I speak. It wouldn't be many more Halloweens after that this little mind would deduce that Dracula wouldn't be wearing something with his picture on it. That's where my wonderful mom would come in. In 1976, the year I would be Dracula, my mom made me a cape. She was quite the seamstress. And now, not only did I wear the face of the undead, I also donned the long black cape, stand-up collar and all. My mom made my transition into the Prince of Darkness as good as it gets. And that cape never went to waste. I think I was Dracula every weekend after that, until sadly, the cape was no more.
That was a good story. It was very nice. They aren't all going to be sentimental stories. This is the big Halloween show, you know.
Slow your roll, Karis. I did start this story in 1974, right? Well, most of you remember, I'm sure, checking candy for razor blades and poison, but that was actually the Halloween that kicked it up a notch. In fact, there's never been an authenticated reported story of poison or razor blades being in candy. Except one. Ronald Clark O'Brien, known as the Candyman, or the man who killed Halloween, for Pasadena, Texas. On October 31st, 1974, this guy poisoned his own kids for their insurance money. He had taken cyanide or something to that effect and put it in those big long pixie sticks we used to like. And I guess he put more in the little boys who he liked less than his daughter. This guy was really sick. He was caught. He was his own worst enemy. He couldn't keep his story straight with police and eventually was arrested. I mean, this guy not only put the cyanide in the pixie sticks, he stapled them back together. This wasn't the best job in the world, but he was executed by lethal injection in March of 1984, so he finally got what was coming to him, I guess. But I think that's the only poison in the candy on record, or at least I know that any other cases that have ever been reported, it always ends up being a family member. Which is a good thing, don't get me wrong, but I remember there were kids whose parents used to take the candy to hospitals and the x-ray rooms and everything else. My parents were pretty good about it. They weren't going through the candy to hoard it for themselves. They actually were checking for stuff and were concerned.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
Macabrecast's Big Halloween Show. Brought to you by Monster Kids Everywhere.
We got a Macabrecast favorite on the line. It's Grim.
Grim Facts with Grim Candy.
Grim facts. Real things. Yeah. Grim facts.
Hi, Dark Mark. I just saw the post about Macabrecast coming out. I'm so excited. I'm going to leave a Halloween memory. And actually, it's quite macabre. So heads up, because it's actually a true story. When I was 12, and I'm the same age as you, Dark. So early 80s. And I decide I've had enough of trick-or-treating, so I leave my twin sister and our other friend to walk home from the adjacent neighborhood. I've had enough. I'm going to walk home. So I walk home. Halfway home, I get a little creeped out because there's just no one around. It was Halloween night, but it was on the later side. And we lived in this neighborhood, which wasn't great for trick-or-treating, which is the reason we were in the adjacent neighborhood. So I had a brief moment of being creeped out, but I booked it home. Also, that's the year I think I saw The Shining on Channel 56, and oh my God, it just seared into my freaking memory. So that was the year I was exposed to a lot of horror movies and stuff like that, and probably kicked off my fascination with all things dark. Anyway, one of the reasons I was so creeped out is this is the difference between now and then with parents, with the mindset of just life, okay? Because not 6 months prior to this, I'd say an eighth of a mile from my house. I lived in Stoneham, but I was on the Melrose line. And there was a girl named Jody Johnson, excuse me, I think a year older than me. And she got murdered in the woods across the street from us on Easter Sunday that year, walking her little 3-year-old nephew in the woods, and the crime of opportunity. She was essayed and she was murdered, and that little nephew wandered his way a mile away until someone found him wandering the road. And I'll tell you, they didn't discover the perpetrator until, 25 years later because of DNA, and he was in jail for something else. And looking back, it's like, why wasn't anyone more concerned about, yeah, no, I don't want you out by yourself. I know you're 12, but something just horrendous just happened in our neighborhood, and I don't know. I think upon it often, obviously. Her name was Jody Johnson, and rest in peace. It's just a horrible story. And I just found it pertinent. And I want to honor her memory, really. And you know what? We somehow made it through, and maybe we are a little hyper vigilant these days, but it's unfortunately because we know better, and makes me sad for the way of the world. And this is why I love horror movies. I can remove myself, and I can immerse myself in this world where this thing that I'm watching really is probably not going to happen if it's a horror of a certain genre. And it also makes you say, I guess my life's okay right now. I'm not getting murdered. I know that sounds dark, but hey, that's the audience I'm talking to. Have a great week, Dark.
Grim facts. Real things. Yeah. Grim facts.
Well, there was no way after a compelling story like that I was just going to leave it at that. So I dug in a little bit. William Brown was the man brought to trial in 1988, 8 years after the murder of Jody. The star witness was James Ford. He was now 11. That was the 2-year-old nephew that had wandered away. But 2 different times, the jury came back divided. They could not decide this man's guilt or innocence, and the judge declared a mistrial November 16th, 1988. Now, I searched and searched and searched because the prosecution said they were going to go for a retrial, and I can find nothing on that. So, is William Brown still among us? Who knows? But all in all, great story, Grim. Thank you. Yeah, 70s, the 80s. That's what it was like.
Please. Try Egypt about 2,000 years ago. Then talk to me.
Hey, Karis, look, remember Anna? Anaphylactic? Sent in a picture from the witch's ball. Nice pic, Anna. Phylactic. This is a picture of me on the left. I'm going to a Halloween party in 1990 as Jason. That's obviously Jason without the mask in this picture. And I had an awful lot of hair back then, believe it or not. I wasn't actually bald like I am now, so to create that bald was tough. I used cheap bald caps, but I used quite a few of them, so you couldn't, usually you can see through those. So right now on the line, we have Horror Chat Matt. You remember Matt, right, Karis?
Do I remember Matt? Of course I do. Horror Chat Matt.
Hey, Doc Mark, just want to share some of my favorite Halloween memories. I have so many since it's my favorite time of the year, but I'll spare you and your audience and limit myself to a top 5. Number 1 is one of my earliest Halloween memories. I was around 5 or 6. My mother made me an awesome homemade Batman costume. In my mind, I legit thought I was patrolling the streets of Gotham as the Cape Crusader. In reality, I was walking around in a cut-up blue bathrobe, but I'll stand by that costume and even say Adam West would have been proud to suit up in it. Definitely my favorite Halloween costume of all time, until I convinced my mother I was old enough to wear a Jason Voorhees costume consisting of one of the world's worst all-time plastic ball caps anyone's ever seen, which I proceeded to wear for the next 5 Halloweens in a row. Number 2, my elementary school in Cambridge, Mass. threw one of the greatest Halloween parties of all time. I was in 3rd grade and was so surreal to see my school completely decked out for Halloween in the gym. They played spooky music and held a dance complete with a costume contest. The cafeteria had a small, very tame haunted house. In the main lobby, they had all sorts of games, mummy wrapping, blindfolded, guess what's in the bucket challenges, bobbing for candy apples, which is disgusting by today's standards, but hey, it was the 80s. And in the auditorium, my favorite part, they were playing the original Universal Studios Dracula, which I just happened to be dressed as. Number 3 on my list is my last time trick-or-treating. I was in 8th grade, decked out in that fabulous Jason costume with my best friend, and we knew it would be our last year trick-or-treating as we were going to high school the next year. So we decided to stay out extra late and walk down an extremely busy, poorly lit road with a speed limit of 40 miles per hour. Oh yeah, did I mention there was no sidewalk? Literally every house had their lights off, and it seemed we risked our lives for nothing. Finally, we hit the jackpot. The lady that greeted us at the door informed us we were the first trick-or-treaters she's ever had in 30 years living there, and that she did not have any Halloween candy for us. However, she proceeded, much to her husband's horror, to give us his week's worth of full-size candy bars if we promised to get home safely. Totally worth it. Number 4, now that my trick-or-treating days are long in the rearview mirror, I have immensely enjoyed watching the excitement in my daughter's eyes as she picks out her costume and taking her out trick-or-treating. I know we're in the home stretch of taking her out on Halloween as she's now 11, but I plan on making the last couple of trips as memorable and special as possible. Number 5 on my list is the ultimate privilege of being a dad, and that is collecting candy tacks and all Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and Kit Kats, and then enjoying them as I keep my tradition of watching John Carpenter's Halloween on Halloween alive. As always, keep up the great work, Doc Mark. I hope you and your listeners have a great Halloween, and remember to make sure to be in front of your TV at 9 o'clock with your silver shamrock mask on for the big giveaway.
I am so glad that out of all the Batman you could have mentioned, that you mentioned Adam West. Nice. And listen, hey, it doesn't have to end when they stop trick-or-treating. You can dress up, you can give out candy, you can still make all those children out there have such a better experience. Thank you, Horror Chat Matt.
So, Doc, before you wrap up the big Halloween show, I want to revert back to Grim Kim's story about the murderer, William Brown. Well, you said you didn't find any information about the retrial. I did some digging myself, and there was a retrial. It was in the fall of 1990, and William Brown, who tried to claim double jeopardy but was denied, was convicted of first-degree murder, mandatory life without parole, with an additional life sentence for the rape. So there you go. William Brown, convicted.
Wow, thank you, Karis. And thank you, Macabre Theater followers, Monster Kids, for sharing this Halloween Eve with us. Very appreciated. Thank you for sharing your memories and stories and pictures. And we hope to do this again next year. And so here we are in 2023, at the threshold of another Halloween. I must confess that the hype and build-up to this unofficial holiday sometimes exceeds the day itself, or at least to me. I think that's because once it's here, I know in the blink of an eye it will be over. And even though everything must eventually come to an end, sometimes that come down has me a little more than sad. But you can bet your nightmares, come November 1st, the countdown begins again. And I'll be here next year. I hope you too will be with me. Happy Halloween.